Module 9C, line 155, title, evidence, and insurance. At least blank. If left blank, then 15, or if paragraph 8A is checked, then 5 days prior to closing date, title evidence deadline, a title insurance commitment issued by a Florida licensed title insurer with legible copies of instruments listed as exceptions attached thereto, in parentheses, title commitment, and after closing an owner's policy of title insurance, in parentheses, see Standard A for terms, shall be obtained and delivered to buyer. If seller has an owner's policy of title insurance covering the real property, seller shall furnish a copy to buyer and closing agent within 5 days after effective date. The owner's title policy premium, title search and closing services, in parentheses, collectively owner's policy and charges, shall be paid as set forth below. The title insurance premium charges for the owner's policy and any lender's policy will be calculated and allocated in accordance with Florida law, but may be reported differently on certain federally mandated closing disclosures and other closing documents. For purpose of this contract, municipal lien search means search of records necessary for the owner's policy of title insurance to be issued without exception for unrecorded liens imposed pursuant to chapters 153, 159, or 170 FS in favor of any governmental body, authority, or agency. Check 1. 1. Seller shall designate closing agent and pay for owner's policy and charges, and buyer shall pay the premium for buyer's lender's policy and charges for closing services related to the lender's policy, endorsements, and loan closing, which amounts shall be paid by buyer to closing agent or such other providers as buyer may select. Or 2. Buyer shall designate closing agent and pay for owner's policy and charges for closing services related to buyer's lender's policy, endorsements, and loan closing. Or 3, which is only relevant in Miami-Dade and Broward regional provision, buyer shall designate closing agent, seller shall furnish a copy of a prior owner's policy of title insurance or other evidence of title and pay fees for a continuation or update of such title evidence, which is acceptable to buyer's title insurance underwriter for reissuance of coverage, B, tax search, and C, municipal lien search. Buyer shall obtain and pay for post-closing continuation and premium for buyer's owner's policy, and if applicable, buyer's lender's policy. Seller shall not be obligated to pay more than blank. If blank, then $200 for abstract continuation or title search ordered or performed by closing agent.
Okay. So 9C3 is pretty meaty and it's pretty dense, but we can sum it up pretty quickly for you. So you have 15 days. So alert, set your calendar reminders. Don't forget it's another deadline based on the effective date. You have 15 days if Section 8B is checked. And if Section 8A is checked, so you don't have a financing contingency, you have 5 days prior to closing. So you're going to want to actually do it, work backwards from whatever your closing date is per the contract. And you have 15 days prior to closing date that essentially the title company needs to provide all parties a copy of your title commitment. Yeah. A title commitment is a list of requirements, and we're going to get into what all of that is. But for purposes of getting through this provision, we need to know who's choosing and who's paying. If you select 9C1, essentially the seller is going to choose who the closing agent is, and the seller is going to pay for
Correct.
The title insurance policy, the owner's policy, the lien search, and the title searches. If 9C2 is checked, it's the opposite. The buyer is going to choose the closing agent, and the buyer is going to choose for the owner's policy, of course the lender's policy. The buyer's always going to pay for the lender's policy. They're going to pay for the title search and the lien search. Mm-hmm. And this Miami-Dade Broward provision, it's not limited to Miami-Dade and Broward provision. The FAR bar put this in place because it's most commonly used in Miami-Dade and Broward. Mm-hmm. You're not limited to it. So as a bargaining tool, if you want to select this to, as a buyer, make your offer more attractive and say, hey, I'll pay for what this section says, buyer selects the closing agent, pays for the owner's and lender's title insurance policy premium, and then the seller is going to pay for the municipal lien search and any updated title search or
It's
continuation
almost
of
like
title.
splitting the fees.
Yeah, it's a little bit more of a split. There is an obligation for the seller, if they have it available, to provide their prior title commitment or their prior title policy, excuse me, as a basis for title agents to use. Sometimes people don't hold on to them. It's a really valuable document. You should hold on to your title policy, but in the event the seller doesn't, they're limited to up to $200 if you don't fill that in. That's usually the highest cost you'll incur to order a title search. And the seller will be responsible for the title search and the lien search.
So I think that it's also depending on your county, what is usually seen, right?
100%.
So I think newer agents may not know, well, what should I put? Should I put buyer or seller, So I think that really relates to the market that you work in.
The market you work in, and then of course the deal itself. Like, I think you need to take both into consideration.
Because it is a negotiation tactic. It is something to make your offer more attractive, most likely.
So if you have a buyer that really wants the property and you're in a county like Orange County, for example, where typically in Orange County, the seller selects and chooses and typically pays. Yes, chooses, selects, pays for title insurance and the lien search and the title search, and you would select 9C1. If you maybe are in Orange County and you want it as a buyer to put your offer to the front of the pile or have it seem more attractive to a seller because you're taking on more of the cost, then maybe you would select 9CB,
the buyer would pay.
9C2 or 9C3,
Correct.
where the buyer would choose. So it really is case specific, but as a rule of thumb, it's really just Miami-Dade and Broward that have the buyer select title, where you would use 9C3, and then basically every other county north of Broward, so Palm Beach and up, seller typically chooses and pays, and the buyer would select 9C1.